How would you describe the Australian music scene then? So it's coming out of the 70s and obviously just ticking over into the 80s. How would you have described it?
Fucking hopeless. There are all these old Aussie dinosaurs hanging around, like Billy Thorpe, and I know I'll probably get hung, drawn, and quartered if I start weighing in on all the old rockers. It was sort of like in transition. There were some, and then like round about 1980, it was coalescing into the Sydney and Melbourne pub rock explosion, where
Mm.
suddenly there were gigs every night. I mean, you could go to Sydney or Melbourne and play for 3 weeks. You could play for 4 weeks and never play the same place twice. There were so many gigs. There were so many bands, and it kind of really exploded. And for a while, that was the thing to do. All the young people were going and seeing bands. You'd meet someone, and this tonight I'm seeing this, and tomorrow I'm seeing that, and then the night after that we're going to go over here and see them. And there were
Mm.
bands popping up everywhere, and there were gigs popping up everywhere. It was a very healthy environment. And in the 70s, it didn't seem so healthy. It seemed that there weren't so many pubs and wasn't so popular. And then bang, it found itself in 1980s, and there was the sort of Australian pub rock formula of Chisel and Angels and Rose Tattoo and In Excess and all that stuff. There was a sort of the Aussie rock kind of formula.
Mm.
Yeah, it was hard though if you weren't one of them and you weren't doing that thing. And until we were on Countdown, of course, Countdown was the big decider.
Mm.
When we got on Countdown, everything changed. Up until then, we were just an opening band, opening for everybody, and then bang, we're on Countdown. That was 1981, and
Mhm.
after Countdown, everything changed.
I feel like you were talking about the pub rock explosion around that time. Kicking around the Sydney
Yeah,
scene around that time was a band called the Cockroaches, which had members that would go on to form the Wiggles. Do
yeah,
you remember the Cockroaches at all?
the Wiggles. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, do you remember them as the Cockroaches
I
at all?
never ran into them.
No? Mm.
Yeah, I do remember the Cockroaches. I do remember the Cockroaches. They were they were quite a popular band. Um, I thought they were probably the exact opposite of us. They were sort of a good time band, and they made people laugh, and they were all about having a good time and not taking yourself seriously. And of course, we took ourselves very
You're
seriously,
like, fuck that.
and we weren't about having a good time. Yeah, 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 yeah. We weren't about having a good time. We were about, we're really, you know, we're sort of troubled, and this music is deep and meaningful. Who's smiling? Who's laughing? Who's having a good time? That's not what it's all about.
Get out,
Yeah.
leave. Yeah.
Why are you asking me about the Why are you asking
Cockroach-
me about the cockroaches?
because for a couple of reasons, but mainly because I've become friends over the last few years with Anthony Field, and just looking at because obviously he's a fair bit older than
Ah,
me, so he played in a different in a completely different era. The early '80s Australian music I know very little about. Obviously, I was born in '85, so it's when I speak to him about it, and we're talking about the Cockroaches and playing in, how he was cutting his teeth playing in pubs. It just got me thinking that maybe you guys in the church had run into each other back in the day. Yeah,
we
sorry.
never we never played with them. We never played with them. No, it's strange because I played with everybody else. I played with the Radiators. I played with My Sex. I played with Mental as Anything, In Excess, Chisel. All
Mm.
of the other bands, but I never ran in. I never ran into the Cockies ever.
Sometimes when I'm doing older Australian acts, what I like to do is I like to find some of the friends that I've made in the current music scene who grew up listening to that music and ask them for a question. Like for example, when I spoke to Ed from the
Yeah.
Saints, Ed Kepper from the Saints, I hit up Kelly Lloyd, the bass player from Screen Feeder, lovely, lovely Brisbane band. I asked her about the church. I was like, hey, is there anything you've ever wanted to ask Steve Kilbey? And she just sent me back a laugh reaction and said,
Uh-huh.
ask him how many drugs are too many drugs.
Yeah.
So how just too many?
Well, I could. No, I. Um, to me, I couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody knows that. It was impossible when I guess, yeah, you always want more, don't you? I had no, what's the word I'm looking for?
Off switch.
I had no restraint. I
Yeah.
had no restraint. I was I was a drug monster. I was a fiend. I was a fiend. That's
Oh,
true. I was. It started with pot, and then, as each thing, it was funny, as each thing came along, well, the thing about pot was it wasn't as bad as everybody said. Like, people lumped all drugs in together. If you smoke pot, you're going to be fucked. And then I smoked pot for a few years and really found out I was not fucked. And not only that, but I was functioning really well and playing gigs, and I was smoking pot morning, noon, and night. Me and the drummer, even we even rolled joints when we shared a room. We even rolled joints for when we woke up in the middle. He'd come and wake me up and go, Steve, it's 3 a.m., the time for our 3 a.m. joint. And it was so bad. This is true, you'll laugh at this. I'd be like, hey, Richard, we're going to have a walk. Let's roll a joint and we'll go for a walk in this park. And then when we get in the park, we'll smoke a joint. And then he'd roll two. And I go, what's the other one? And he said, that's the joint to have the walk. He said, that's the joint. So we have the walk. And then when we get in the park, we'll smoke the next joint. And we were like, we were smoking pot like it went out of fashion. And then of course you run into, there was none of these MDA type drugs in those days. There was no ecstasy and stuff like that. So the next thing on was mushroom and LSD. I found mushrooms to be pretty benign. LSD fucked me up a few times. I probably didn't do as much LSD as people think I did, because I had a few bad trips. And it was like, whoa, I don't want to do that too much. I was always, look, I took drugs so I could make music. I was looking, because pot helped me and still helps me make music. Still, even to this day, I found, wow, this stuff really goes well with music. It helps me write words, helps me write music, helps me get in the spirit of it. I found LSD and mushrooms did that too, but they put you out of commission a bit. So, you'd take LSD and be sitting home in your home bedroom studio ready to write a song, and you had all these great ideas, but you couldn't handle the technical aspects so easily. And then of course eventually cocaine reared its ugly head, and although I really enjoyed cocaine as an experience, it has no benefit whatsoever in my opinion. For me, doesn't add anything to creativity. Nobody snorts coke and writes a good song, in my opinion. And then, of course, eventually, at the end of all of that, along comes heroin, and then, you know, yeah, you get a little bit of creativity out of that, and for a little while, and then sooner or later you're just an addict, and that's the end of the line, and then you have to fight that off. So there you go. Yeah, I wasn't really. I wasn't really the all the drugs like Molly and stuff that people take these days, and ketamine, and all of this, I don't know, whatever Elon Musk takes, all of those drugs, they weren't really around in my day.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I would have. I mean, I have had them all since, but not as a sort of a young musician. Not as a young musician. I think I've had every drug in the world. Maybe I've had ayahuasca, and I've had ibogaine. I think I've probably fucking had everything. But the only reliable one, in my opinion, is pot. And pot, I still smoke, and I still enjoy, and it still helps me create music. So I should have just stopped with that. That would have been a great idea if I hadn't experimented
Where would you get
with
all
the
your life
others.
experience?
Yeah.
It you,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Being a junkie is definitely experience. I met
Yeah.
a lot of people, and I met a lot of people. I did a lot of things I never would have done. It kicked my ass and fucked me up for 10 years, and I lost everything I had. And yeah, I guess that was meant to happen. I look at it's strange. I feel like it was meant to happen. I feel like I think I was a very arrogant and rude person, and I thought I had only won and won and won. I was always winning. I never lost. And I made money, and I was popular and successful. I was touring around, and I didn't have much time I wasn't very philosophical about it all. And then heroin showed me another side of life. You know, heroin put me in the gutter where I was sitting there with hardcore junkies who'd had miserable, horrible lives. And I started, you know, I had to go to NA meetings, had to do rehabs. And in a way, I learned a lot about myself that I never would have learned if I'd never had that experience. But I really wish I hadn't had that experience. I wish it had never all happened. But you can't live your life in regrets, because that's what happens to a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics. When they get clean, they look back on what a mess their life has been, and then they go, fuck, I've got to have something, you know, because I can't handle all these regrets. So there's a bit of a trap. But yeah, so in answer to the lady from Scream Feeder, for me in those days, there was no such thing as too much. It was like the more I could get my hands on, and at my height, at the height of my drug madness, I was doing 5 grams of smack a day. I was spending. I'd buy a ball of heroin that big for 5 grams, and at the end of the day, it'd all be gone.
So when was this?
And that was like
this period?
Yeah.
When was this period?
This is the 90s. The 90s with But
why do you think smack
the 80s
off so hard in the late 80s, early 90s in Australia?
I don't think smack took off in the 90s.
No.
All the junkies I met in the 90s were telling me that the 80s were the golden days, and like, oh man, you should have been here like in 1982. It was like you get that much for $50. It was so strong, straight from Vietnam. You know, I think all of the drugs are out there. They're all raging in all of the communities across the world. I think they're all. You may be out of the loop, but I don't know. I think there will always be a market for opiates. Maybe it's fentanyl these days and stuff, but it makes you feel good about yourself. And that's why I liked it. It made me. I didn't feel so bad about myself. I felt happy to be me when I had some heroin. I was content. That was the appeal of that. Yeah. Is this going to get people to my show?
Yeah, 100%. We'll just talk all about drugs and misery for 25 minutes. And
so someone's gonna go, wow, I'm going to go and see that show because this bastard was such a drug addict. Yeah.
Well, mate, as one recovering addict to another, I
what were you recovering from?
Alcohol. 2018, I had my last. So 7 years ago. So
when?
7 years ago. So started 2018.
Congratulations.
Thank you, mate.
You see, okay, congratulations. You see, that's the one thing that never fucked me up. I have I have a relationship with alcohol, a very healthy relationship. I have a drink when I want it. I can have 2 drinks, 3 drinks. I have a drink when I go on stage, if I go to a party. But I noticed this year, I think it was about a month ago till I had my first drink this year. And I had a drink and I went, oh, that was nice. That doesn't seem to run in my family. My mum and dad didn't drink very much. My dad would every now and then have a beer. My mum would have a sherry at Christmas. And I don't have any relationship with alcohol. I don't think about, oh, when do I have my last one? Or I shouldn't, I want to have more or anything. I've got a cupboard full of exotic booze at home I never touch. But it's funny, but it's all the same thing. In the end, it's all the same thing.
Whatever your poison is.
And scientists have discovered that at this base level, whether it's alcohol or gambling or heroin, at some base level, it's all translated into this one thing. And everybody has their own thing that will make them come undone. For me, it was never going to be alcohol. It was always going to be heroin.
Well, heroin does.
I see guys. Look, I walk past the pub in my. Huh?
Oh, sorry.
I walk past the pub. I walk past the pub and I see guys sitting in the window drinking beer. I say to my girlfriend, why can't I get that happiness? Why can't I get that fucking thing out of this? Why? And I've seen guys in the band become alcoholics. And it's a funny old thing. It will reel you in over a long time. There were a couple of guys in the band and I watched alcohol over years and years and years reel them in. Not like me. When I discovered heroin, like within 3 weeks, I was a full-on fucking drug fiend. Whereas I've seen other guys over 30 years, slowly the drinking gets more and more and more, and they become more and more changed by it. And then you get that thing where someone's a really nice guy, and then as soon as he has a drink, he turns into a real prick. It's funny how, and I know speed freaks, I know coke fiends, and as I said, we got Elon Musk. He's like into ketamine and all. One can only imagine the stuff he has access to. There are new drugs all the time being invented and being tried out, but in the end. I can live without everything except weed. And when I make music, I like to smoke weed. If someone said you can never ever have another drink, I go, okay. I wouldn't have to fight. I wouldn't have to fight that. And you're in that situation.
Yeah, I'm medical.
You're in that situation. You could never have another drink. You can never have another drink.
No more drinks, but I can smoke weed.
Good. Yeah.
Mate, we are about a minute away from close, so I'm going to say goodbye. Steve, this has
We
been a
are.
really interesting chat.
Okay. Have you got anything there you can use?
Oh, I've got heaps of stuff, mate. It's fun. We're known for this, for just freewheeling
Okay.
conversations
Yeah, yeah.
with interesting people. So thank you very
Okay.
much
All
for your
right then.
time.
All right then.
Be good to
Good
yourself,
to
mate.
see you, Tom. All right.
No worries, mate.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, mate.
See ya.